Have you ever had to request basic service?
Oh, you mean like basic cable?
No, I'm talking about to ATC, where we're going to talk about the differences between flying in the UK versus the US.
In the hangar.
In the hangar.
Welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Christy Wong.
And I'm Dan Milliken. In the Hangar is sponsored by some really, really great sponsors. We're going to have more information at the end and links down below.
All right, we've got one of my favorite people on the show today, and he just happens to be from the UK, so he'll be able to answer all of our questions.
And he happens to have just moved to the great state of Texas.
Well, yeah, because he knew it was probably the most awesome place to go.
Except then he went to Houston. I was like, don't do that for Texas, but okay, whatever.
Noel Phillips, why would you go to South Texas when you could be in North Texas?
Yeah, I don't get that. Noel, thanks for coming on, but explain this problem to us.
Well, you know, as we've mentioned last time you had me on this show last year, very appreciated. We were looking at moving to Georgia, so I mean, like,
oh, so at least we got you
closer,
a little bit closer.
Awesome.
But yeah, but no, we're loving it. Absolutely loving it down there. The weather, anyway, which is always interesting, which is good.
Yeah,
it's like one extreme or the other. So
yeah, South Texas is a little bit different than North Texas in good and bad ways, but
yeah, mostly bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
somebody's not biased.
Okay, look, I work in Houston a whole lot. One of my biggest clients, we're down there all the time. And you've got, 103-degree humidity. You've got, 170-degree heat. And traffic is horrible. So other than that, it's great.
So it's like the swampy LA is what you're saying.
Well.
Oh, wow.
Well, I'm saying as far as the weather, I guess that's what because the people are great.
I was going to say, we'd like to apologize in advance to our South Texan brethren.
We just alienated entirely.
I like how we just opened up this show and we've already insulted Noel. We've insulted half of Texas.
And probably the UK. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Noel, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's actually talk about some of the UK flying. So you and I actually got to fly together last year.
Yes.
That was really cool and a very eye-opening experience for me. Because we flew a PA-28, which I'm very familiar with, but it was not the same.
We fly on the other side over there, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's probably why you were going wrong. But
right? I mean, but honestly, there was just a lot of differences that I was really leaning on you for because I was not expecting some of the things that we encountered over there. So let's kind of dive into it.
Right, yeah, okay. It's a little bit different over there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, one thing I noticed was even the little small fields that we went to had a control tower of sorts.
Of sorts, yeah, but it's not a control tower.
Right, it's weird.
It's
right,
in a control
but
tower.
it isn't.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, yeah, so explain that.
So it's called an air-to-ground service, and most airfields in the UK, the smaller airfields, have, like, it's in a tower, a physical building of a tower, and then there's a guy in there who may or may not be there. He might be on his lunch, he might be having a week off.
So you might call and there might be nobody there, and you're just like, well, I guess I'm on my own.
Precisely, and it's an effectively an informational service only. So they can advise you, but you don't have to effectively follow what they say necessarily. If you're at an uncontrolled airfield, it's still at pilot's discretion. Everything is down to the pilot. And you're just telling them and they're advising you, for example, that there's, if you're about to enter the runway and cut in front of somebody, they might say, hang on a minute, there's a guy on final. You might not want to do that.
But you're legally allowed to say, I'm an adult, I do what I want, and then...
Exactly, at the uncontrolled airfields, you can do that. So it's a little bit strange, but you can't guarantee that you've got that guy there. So you could call up, like at 6:01 p.m. when they've gone home, you could call up and there's nobody there. So, and then it's just down to a basic traffic service. So it's...
Gotcha, okay. And
it's like, imagine Hicks or, one of those small where the president of the homeowners association jumps on the handheld radio to tell you what to do.
Oh my. Well, okay, and how likely are people to follow those advisory instructions?
Pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I guess the biggest thing is you don't want to get told off by the guy in the tower because they will still say to you, that was a bit daft of you to pull out in front of somebody.
And
or
nobody
whatever,
wants to wind up on the news.
Exactly. No,
yeah.
Precisely. It kind of, it's not a good look, is it? But people are generally really good. And I think that's the thing. There's an understanding there that people will to keep the traffic flowing nicely, everybody just does like the right thing. And okay, and if somebody cuts across the traffic pattern or something like that, there'll be a bit of a, what are you doing, and people will get frustrated with it. But for the most part, everybody sort of just follows, and it just works. It's quite good.
No, it does. It does seem to work over there. It's a lot better than flying at some of the uncontrolled fields here.
Yeah. Well, in your flying, I know that you got your training, your private in the UK, but you also hold an FAA US certificate, right?
Of sorts. It's based on my UK license.
Okay, so tell us about how that works.
So I have a UK PPL. I did my training back in the UK many years ago. Stopped flying for many years and then picked it up again a couple of years ago in COVID, actually, when the whole kind of world was going crazy and my main YouTube channel was a little bit uncertain. I was like, you know what, I want to go flying again, and that's kind of when I did that. And then to fly over here, because obviously knowing I travel quite a bit over here at the time, I looked into this whole FAA piggyback thing, and it's called a 6175 or something, and it's effectively you go to the FAA and they will take your UK license and issue you a FAA PPL that's based on your UK license. So you've got to keep your UK license there, and that's effectively based on the privileges that you hold on that. And the process for getting that it's pretty straightforward. It just was a bit of paperwork, really, with the CAA, and they send off all your information to the FAA, and they sort of shake hands and go, yes, this guy knows how to fly a plane. Then you get an FAA instructor in the UK who effectively goes through and signs all your paperwork and gives you your paper license, and come over here then to do a biannual, which I did with our friend Mr. Lewis Dixon down in Florida. He did my biannual for me, and that was it.
Lou's from Australia, right?
Oh my goodness.
Okay, no.
North Australia.
North Australia.
Yeah.
That accent, yeah. So.
Wow. Okay, so let's keep our count. Who have we offended on this episode?
I'm going after I'm equal opportunity offender here.
Yeah. Okay, so would you be able to add on to your ratings here then, now that you have an FAA piggyback certificate?
So I have read that officially you can, and you can. Well, my main thing I want to do next is my instrument rating,
right,
because I had my basic restricted instrument rating, as it's called in the UK, which is only valid in the UK. So over here, clearly, clouds are not a good thing when you're a VFR pilot, and you have to stay well clear of them. And
the clouds are different here than they're
very
in the
different
UK.
clears. Yeah, you need 500 feet of clearance here in the UK, whereas in the US, whereas in the UK, not so much. But yes, it's to get my instrument rating here, apparently I can add it onto my piggyback license, but I need to do a bit of research. But I'm actually thinking that the best way to go might be to just do my FAA PPL and then keep that separate, because with the piggyback thing, you're kind of always building upon other things, which it's like a Jenga game, isn't it? You could just have to take one thing out of there and then the whole thing could come collapsing down.
Right.
And it's a bit...
So you get your instrument here in the U.S. You're saying you would piggyback that onto your UK license.
The US license, that'll be on my US one, but then the US one is based on the UK. It's confusing.
So basically, all we need to do is we just need to get you your PPL check ride in the US.
Exactly, yeah.
So I actually had
so you're saying get rid of the piggyback, just have a
Just
clean
have a
PPL.
standalone
Okay.
PPL in the US, and then build it all upon that.
I actually had
That's
a
where I'm
student
heading.
once. He came to the flying club, the Arrow Valley Flying Club, and he had the same thing. He had a certificate from Finland.
Right.
And so he had to do the same thing. He basically had to do his private pilot check ride here. So he had to make sure he met all the requirements, do the sign off and everything. And then he did the check ride with the DPE. But I mean, at that point, he had a few hundred hours.
Right.
Because he'd
Exactly.
been flying on the piggyback certificate. So.
I see.
Yeah, so that's basically
So
what
that's-
you just need to do is you just need to do the check ride and then...
Exactly. And I think now I've been here a bit, and I'm starting to learn the ways of flying in the US. I'm a little bit more comfortable doing that than I was
Yeah.
previously, and
Yeah.
it's...
The hardest part is that we don't have advisory air to ground or whatever, so you're just,
you're
it
on
is
your own,
like
yeah.
wild west at some of these uncontrolled fields, so...
Okay. What are the main differences between flying in the UK versus flying in the US?
I mean, the biggest thing for me that I've found since I've been here is how kind of open everything is.
Open. What do you mean?
So in the UK, we're covered in airspace in the UK. There's Class D airspace everywhere you look. I can't even fly from where we were in the north of England. I can't even fly to Blackpool, which is about a 40-minute flight, without either traversing through Class D airspace or whatever to get round to it. You do massive diversions around and everything. Here, you don't really get that so much. And even when you do, I've found that it's so much easier to just get through that. A few weeks ago, we flew up to meet you up in Denton. And from Houston, I'd done the UK thing with the flight plan of going all the way up and around the airspace, around the top, because Denton's kind of opposite side of Dallas to where we were coming from. So I'd planned my little route out, going all the way around. And we kind of got to the south of Dallas, and I was on flight following. And we called up regional approach up here. And he said, how do you want to get across DFW? And I'm like, we're not going across DFW, we're going all the way around. He's like, no, we can take you straight over the top of DFW. I'm like, really?
Yeah, his very first flight, he got over the top.
Right.
Nice.
I was flight tracking him, and I was like, no one just got over the top. Like, I wonder if they watch your channel,
And he's like, sure. He says, it's like 3,000 feet straight over the top, and we took a shook. We went south of south of Lovefield, right past downtown Dallas, right over the top of DFW and into Denton. And I'm like, I never even asked for that.
And you thought you were going to land and they were going to handcuff you and...
In Britain, I mean, if you would consider where Heathrow is, I mean, when I met you near Heathrow, we had to fly from an airport 30 miles away. You can't come within 20 or 30 miles of Heathrow.
miles
and you had to have like a slot as well. So that was another thing too. So we're at this like little podunk airport. I hate to say it like that. It was like it was basically like Denton, but you had to, it was like having like an IFR slot, but it was for a VFR flight. It was very different. So he was like, all right, we got the slot. It's like at 11:40, blah, blah, blah. I was like, wait, what do you, like, we can't just go when we're ready?
Most airports you can, but High Wycombe is a little bit different because it's right next to Heathrow's zone.
Yeah.
Right next, you said 30 miles.
Yeah.
You know how many airports we can count that are within 30 miles?
I was going to say Denton is within 30 miles.
Yeah, because 30 miles is real easy. It's the Class C Vale.
Yeah.
And there's probably 100, I don't know.
Or the Mode C Vale.
Mode C. Yeah, not Class C. Mode C Vale. There's so many airports within that. I mean, yeah, you can't be within probably 10 miles, but from 10 to 30, there's quite a few airports.
I mean, I couldn't imagine like going to Denton and being like, okay, well, I'm here for my slot. Like sometimes I just want to go
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes I just want to get in my airplane and go do happy laps in the pattern or go to Bridgeport or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that is a huge difference.
Okay, so that's one difference. You said it's more open here, and now that makes sense. Happy laps in the pattern, do you have to pay for that in UK?
Well, you have to pay for flying anywhere, but I mean, in terms of like actually getting into an airfield, so it depends on where you go. So where I was based up at Gamston, based aircraft just can fly in and out as much as you like. If I was to fly to another airport, for example, to Leicester, there's a landing fee, and I flew in 3 times, I think, when I met you guys. In the morning, I brought you back to Leicester, and then we went off to Fenland and came back to Leicester, and that was like £20 a go to land.
Oh, so you're saying that I owe you lunch, is what you're saying.
So roundabout way, slot that in there. So there's landing fees with everywhere. You have to generally call for PPR as well, so prior permission request. So if when I flew to High Wycombe to pick you up, I had to pick up the phone before I left and say, right, I'll be landing ETAs this time. This is the call sign. 2 people on board or whatever it was, and that's it. And they're expecting you at that time.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And there is, like Leicester's a little bit different. Leicester, your PPR technically is when you call up on the radio to tell them that you're on the way in.
I'm calling them freedom laps from now on. Because I can just get in the airplane and go. That's a mess.
It's a bit of a pain.
It is a bit of a pain. Do you feel like it discourages general aviation over there?
I don't know about discourages because it's kind of what you're used to.
I guess they don't know better.
It's like it's just the way things are.
He comes to Texas, he's like, what do you mean I can just go?
You see, like
over the top of DFW?
Yeah, exactly.
Or like a few months ago, I flew into Lufkin. I actually bumped into you up at
I know,
Lufkin, didn't I?
that was amazing.
Crazy. I flew into Lufkin, Texas, and walked off the plane, and who should be there but Dan Milliken? I'm like,
the Dan Milliken?
Like, really? It's like you've been tracking my flight or something.
I'm really a stalker.
Stalker, yeah, exactly.
But, I took off from Lufkin to head back to Houston, back to Hooks, and there was a little airfield along the way, Livingston. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's on Lake Livingston, little like a little flying community, but it's a public airport, and I was like, I've seen that airport. It looks really nice. I've seen it on a map before, and I've always
you were
wanted to
just
go in
tempted
there.
to go do a
I
touch
was
and
just
go,
gonna
weren't you?
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? Let's go and do a touch and go. So
And
just
so you
called
called
upon the
ahead.
traffic. Yeah.
You paid for the landing fee.
Right,
in
you got
pounds.
you got your permission to land
said
or
the
whatever.
And you got your slot for departure.
The slot for departure, yeah.
Okay.
And I just called upon the traffic frequency. I'm like, yeah, I'm just popping in for a touch and go, and touched and went. And I was like, I never would have been able to do that in the UK. You know, it would have been, we would at least have had to call them probably afterwards and paid for your touch and go
Right.
or something.
Oh, wow.
Welcome to the US, my friend.
It's good.
Well, I will say that I did almost did a touch and go at Love Field. We did a low pass with tower permission, and still got a bill from Love
Even though
Field.
you never actually like physically touched.
So that, and I called them and said that, and they said, "Oh, okay, never mind."
Oh, okay.
So
So as long as you're not touching, they can't get mad.
no, so well, they can get mad. Well, the
As long
tower
as-
had cleared me, but they didn't get mad. The important thing, but the airport management wanted to charge me a little bit. But so you do get charged for landing fees if you're going to go into DFW or Love Field. I've landed IAH, Houston Intercontinental, and not been charged.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I've landed at DFW in the Warrior, but
no, that was
different.
That was
I
a
was
special deal.
invited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's UK and US. We've got one difference is it's open. You've also talked about just the freedom to fly. Other differences.
I guess that, we've got to talk about some of the things that are nice in the UK, I guess, as well, because there was a lot of nice things
There
about
were
it.
some
Yeah, of
things when
course.
we were over there. There were some things that were better in the UK than the US.
And the thing
I don't remember what they were, but I'm
Well,
sure they're.
I remember the one thing too was like having a hard time understanding what they were saying. So we'd be flying and Noel's basically translating for me. I'm like, no, what they say, So
I
there
wish they
was
spoke
some.
English. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Well, it was there was some terminology differences.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess so. We were talking before about the pass-through message and the basic service and the whole sort of things like that.
I was like, I'm just flying the airplane. You got the radios, man. Like,
So yeah, this isn't. I guess it's not something that's required. You don't have to, as long as you're not in controlled airspace, you don't have to talk to anybody. But when you do, say for example, we spoke to East Midlands, who gave us a basic service, and what that means is they effectively are there to give you information should you need it. So I don't know, are they doing parachuting at this airfield today? Can I go near there, or is this particularly military base active? Because a lot of the time they're not, so you can go straight through their airspace without. And that's what a basic service
so
is.
it's like
they're-
VFR flight following.
yeah,
Flight following.
a little
Yeah.
bit, but they don't coordinate like clearances and things necessarily for you,
Gotcha,
like
okay.
they do on flight following. And then you get like a traffic service, which is kind of more like flight following, where
Okay.
they will alert you to other traffic that's
Which
sort
is
of
very nice.
in the area, which is quite nice.
Because
Why-
they did
why-
give us traffic alerts when we were
They
flying.
did, and I've never,
so.
you never see them, but
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you ask for basic service if you can just get traffic service?
a lot of the time it's down to control of workload and things. A lot of the time, it's not necessarily needed. A lot of the time, I'd take a basic service because you could tell that they were either really busy or the opposite extreme. It's a beautiful, clear day. It's not like you're necessarily going to be seeing many people. You'd see them all anyway. But yeah, a lot of the time you can ask for a traffic service and they won't give it to you because they haven't got control or availability, or you might be a bit far out from their radar coverage to be able to pick up the traffic around you as well, as another reason, which is often the case. For East Midlands, for instance, you get about 40 or 50 miles from the airport, and if you're below about 3,000 feet, they can't see you on the radar, so they can't give you a traffic service if they can't see where you are. So.
But I guess we interrupted you on the things that are better in the UK because we never got there.
Well, I thought that was a good because
Oh, that they have traffic service?
Well, no, that you can distinguish between a basic service and a traffic service because sometimes, like, we'll be flying around here and you're just like, hey, I'd like to pick up VFR flight following, unable, and so you don't get anything.
I have never been denied, and I fly a ton. I've never been denied flight
so
following.
there
Now
was-
I've been in New York airspace. They ended my flight following.
Yeah.
But short of going to AirVenture the last week of July, I've I can get flight. I've never been turned down for flight.
I have
following.
never personally been turned down for flight following, but I've been on flight following, listening to other people get turned down for flight following.
Oh.
So I've heard, and I mean, there were
They just
times-
heard it was the Wong Warrior. You bet. Anything for you, Christy Wong. We're gonna.
It's because I visited the controllers and I brought them tacos, and now they know my.
That's what you've got to do, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
But I mean, so that is something that I think is better, because if the controllers are overworked and overloaded and they can't provide any flight following at all, but you can still get a basic service or something from them.
All right. I think it's a bit of a reach, but I'll give it to you. What else do they have better in the UK?
The one thing that I really like about the UK, which I'm still trying to find my feet here. I've not found anywhere like this, but the amount of little grass airstrips that we have in the UK.
Yes.
Where you can just literally, they'll be in a valley or something, and you'll have a fun approach, like flying down the edge of a valley and dodging power lines and landing uphill on a grass strip or something. And it's fun.
Power lines, that sounds adventurous.
Yeah, exactly. Like one of them Fishburns and up in the north of England, and that's you're coming down. It's on an uphill slope like this, and the approach comes down, but at the bottom there is power lines going across.
Oh,
so you sort of
that
have to
sounds
come down the
terrifying.
hill,
Awesome.
and then you land uphill. So you land really quickly.
Okay,
Like,
I'll see if I
you
can find
land
you
it that
some
way.
scary fields. I got you.
I need some scary.
Does
like,
anybody
some
have any
fun
scary
ones.
fields? Leave them in the comments below for Noel.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That's
Scary
the,
fields for Noel.
You know what I will say?
Hashtag.
I
Scary
will say the
fields for
one,
Noel.
the one thing I actually really enjoyed about flying in the UK was like every one of the fields, even the small little grass ones, had little pilot shops and restaurants at them. So like we went to Leicester,
Yeah.
and it was like this like little grass field.
But
It's
I've
like
heard
nothing.
that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, a lot of them don't. Like the,
I don't
especially
know,
the
the ones
smaller
we went
little
to-
grass
Airfield?
strips. Easter's got nothing. I don't think.
That was different.
That was Scotland. Now we've offended them.
Oh my gosh. We got the running ticker.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but the ones we went to, they weren't like these big airports. They weren't, it was just different. All three of the airports that I went to, like with you, Wickham, and then Leicester, and then
Finland.
Thank you. Exactly. They all three had. So maybe it's just my perception.
Possibly, but they're not necessarily open as well. That's the other thing.
That's
Like,
true. We had
so
just gone
Finland,
to the
we literally got
one.
there.
Yeah, we had just got
was
there and they were
closing.
closing.
So that's they're not
But they still
always
had
open,
it.
but they still had something.
Honestly, we're still reaching for what's better in the UK than the US. You got to give me something here that I can work
Well,
with.
Did you not hear the scary power line story?
That's better.
We're still reaching for something better about the UK than the US.
But no, it's good. I think the thing in the UK as well is the whole kind of community around it. I know there's a big aviation community here. It's very similar, and I think that's something that both countries potentially have going for them as well, because it's just everybody wants to help each other out. And for example, I went to Newquay and ended up getting the plane sort of rolled off the ramp onto the grass
Oh my.
after I parked it, and it was a drop of about like that much. But if I was to try and power it off there, we were going to have issues. Another guy in a Cirrus parked up, and he's like, "Oh, come on, let me give you a hand." And he helped me to move the plane around and everything. And we were, just random people that are flying will just come up and give you a hand. And I know that's the same here as well. But
Yeah,
it's,
absolutely.
and
For the
probably
most
same
part.
worldwide, So
Yeah. So that's something that's good everywhere.
I'll tell you one thing I know that was good about the UK, having flown over there, was that we were able, you can fly a jet with a private pilot certificate. So we got into what's the name of that jet?
Jet Provost.
Provost.
Yeah.
And that was the whole thing, is they had a club, and you could join the club and fly the Jet Provost
Jet Club.
with nothing but a certificate.
Right. Yeah.
And
but
then I don't think you can do that here.
You need to have a jet rating or something for it, though, right? Is there not some sort of? I think
No, they said you could do it with a private certificate.
that's
Okay,
crazy.
maybe
I've
I'm
never
wrong.
looked
Okay,
into
maybe
that,
I'm
but yeah.
reaching for something good about the UK.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. You're
I'm
reaching.
trying
yeah.
to give you guys something.
Well, we're glad that you're here.
Thank you. No, I'm glad to be
absolutely.
here.
We got plans, different things. Like obviously, you came up to visit me.
That's it, yeah.
We want to go down and visit you.
But you'd have to go to Houston.
That's the one thing that's holding me back.
It's this side of Houston, though, so you don't have to go
True,
into
it is the
Houston.
north side.
I fly down to Houston all the time. I'm just joking. We love Houston.
I just switching topics though for a second. I want to know, what's it like sitting on an airplane for like 14, 15, 20 hours at a time when you're doing your videos for your main channel?
Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it because it's nice. It's downtime. It's peace and quiet. It's,
You can be honest with me, Noel. How terrible is it?
It's terrible sitting in like business class and getting served lavish meals and things. Yeah, it's a tough job, but someone's got to do it, right?
Gotcha.
How else will we know how great it is?
Yeah, true.
That's it. It's not all like that. And you know, I did Singapore Airlines recently. That was the world's longest flight, 18 hours, Singapore to New York.
Oh, wow.
And that was funny because I'd got Wi-Fi, and people were saying to me, I literally, since I've watched your flight take off, they're saying, I've been to bed, I've woken up, I've done a full day at work, gone home for dinner, and you're still on that plane.
Yeah,
on the same
exactly.
flight. It's like, wow, when you feel like that. But you know what? It was fun because when you're flying, if you're lucky enough to fly up in the front, you get to sleep, you get to have a nice meal, you get to watch some movies, you get to work a bit on the Wi-Fi, you can have another sleep and have some, you know, it never feels dull. It's
Gotcha.
The tough ones, I think. I did a flight on an airline called Cebu Pacific, who are a Philippines low-cost airline. And they crammed, I mean, they've got a new plane now, it's got even more seats on it, but they crammed 440 people onto an A330.
Oh, my
That
God.
sounds
The
like
leg room is like this. And
That's excessive.
There's no...
That's like the Spirit Airlines of...
Oh,
No, but
for
worse,
sure.
it sounds like, yeah.
But yeah, because it's for
We've
11...
offended Spirit now. Keep
Worse
going,
than
guys.
Spirit. How can you get there?
Keep going.
But it was 11 hours, and there is no entertainment on the plane. There's no screens. There's not even Wi-Fi for you to watch your own
You're just
things.
there with your
It's
thoughts.
just, you just sat there, no flight map even to see where the plane is. You just... That's
Oh,
it.
wow. That
and
sounds
that,
terrible.
That dragged.
Okay.
That did drag on a bit, that flight.
Gotcha. That sounds terrible. Well, then I'm asking for a friend, me, because Kevin and I have this nutty idea that I'm going to have to run by you later. It's not for sure yet, but yeah, we're looking at taking some very long flights just to
To experience that?
It's fun.
Basically, yeah. He's been watching too many of your videos lately, I think. So
You can never watch too many of my videos.
yeah, exactly. We'd
Now
ask
we've
you to-
offended Noel.
My audience, thank you.
Well, Noel, thanks so much for coming back. It wasn't as far of a trip this time for you. So it's great having you here in Texas.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Good.
Thanks for
We'll
having
be
me
seeing
back,
more of
and,
you then.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And thank you guys. And I want to thank our sponsors. And one thing that I want to let you know about our sponsors, every single one of them is a pilot-owned, pilot-run company. And that's why it's really fun to be able to mention them. They support us. You can support them. And we're going to put links and logos up for you to go and check them out. Please do.
Also, please, if you feel so inclined, like, subscribe, and share our content as that helps support the channel as well. And we'll see you next time.
In the hangar.